Hannibal is a really interesting film, because for the first time they had to make drastic changes to the plot of the book that it's based on. Or rather, they really didn't have to, but they did anyway. Let me explain. Originally, Hannibal was going to have the same director and cast as The Silence of the Lambs. However, all this planning was going on before the book was even finished. When the book was finished and released, certain people freaked out about the deeply cerebral plot and an ending that many saw as being absolutely insane. Director Jonathan Demme passed on the film, stating that he thought the book was too gory, and Jodie Foster did not want to reprise her role as Starling because she thought the ending was, well, something a serial killer might write. I'm not even going to talk about the ending of the book, partially because Hannibal is the best novel in the series, in my opinion, and I think you should read it for yourself, and partially because I'm here to talk about the movie. The reason I brought it up is because the producers were so intent on getting Jodie Foster to reprise her role that they completely obliterated the end of the novel, changing the parts that Foster felt were out of character for Clarice Starling and giving it a more standard Hollywood ending rather than the bizarre dive into metaphysics and romance that the novel did. The sad part, by the time all of the changes were made, Foster couldn't be in the movie based on other film commitments. So they got Julianne Moore to play the role. If you enjoyed Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal in the previous film, this is really the movie for you, as he gets a huge amount of screen time, and since Hannibal is no longer in prison and is walking around free, you get to see more sides to the character and a greater range of emotions and depth. The plot has Hannibal in Florence, under the name Dr. Fell, who is attempting to become curator of a museum. Giancarlo Gianni plays Inspector Pazzi, who comes to believe that Dr. Fell is in fact Hannibal Lecter. But instead of doing things properly, he wants to help capture Hannibal alive, as one of Lecter's surviving victims, Mason Verger, played by an uncredited Gary Oldman, is looking for revenge. Verger wants to capture Hannibal and torture him by having him slowly consumed by wild boars. Pazzi, however, misses the opportunity to do this as Hannibal sniffs him out and kills him, and escapes Italy and flees to the United States, where Mason Verger delves into the relationship between Lecter and Starling, intending to use her as bait. He believes that Lecter is in love with Starling and that if she's in trouble, he'll come to the rescue. So he uses his FBI connections to damage her career, and Hannibal does show up to offer her support, while Starling continues to try to capture him. The director this time is Ridley Scott, who does a great job with the weird aspects of the film. Probably the most famous scene is the dinner scene near the end, where a drugged Starling, a very happy Hannibal, and Starling's boss Paul Krenler sit and dine on Krenler's brain. Yeah, it's absolutely gruesome to see Ray Liotta sitting there in a chair with the top of his skull missing as pieces of his brain are carefully excised and cooked and then fed to him. But the entire thing is done really well. Where the film triumphs is in exploring the character of Hannibal Lecter. It can't be nearly as thorough as the novel, which used large amounts of flashbacks, internal monologues, and other literary devices to tell Hannibal's story, but for a visual medium they did a great job. Where the movie fails, however, is where it deviates and undoes Starling's character growth, having her not change at all over the course of the film. It's clear that there's a growing romance between the two characters, but the film makes it seem one-sided and unrequited for Lecter, which I thought makes the altered ending unsatisfying. Hannibal's motives are also missing. It doesn't go into his past, and it doesn't talk about his dead sister or his bizarre method of attempting to revive her, or how Starling saves him from this obsession. It's just a standard chase the serial killer movie where he simply gets away again in the ending. The film left itself open for another sequel, though as it clashed completely with Harris's novel, this was rendered impossible to do, especially as Harris considered the story to be over. Overall, though, it's a decent film for the acting. Some might not accept Moore as Starling, but I think she did a fine job, just not as good as Jodie Foster, but close enough. The film has its flaws, but it's certainly not bad. I'm going to give it a 7 out of a possible 10.